Hi, this is MotherMantiss. I'm keeping this video as spoiler-free as possible. However, there is some very early, very generic game footage. So if you want to go into the game blind and you happen to be one of the very few people, and I can't imagine there are many, who have not seen any Starfield coverage, then you might want to just listen and not watch. And now, on to the video. Hey kids, I am back and I want to talk to you about Starfield. This is not a review because I'm really not far enough into the game to do one, but I did want to talk a little bit about my impressions as a grandma in space. First of all, the game is really pretty. You're thrown into an open world set in the Milky Way galaxy with apparently over 1,000 planets, moons, and space stations. What's cool is that each of these celestial bodies feels unique thanks to a mix of procedural generation and handcrafted details. So you'll encounter all sorts of creatures and inhabitants in your travels, which adds a lot of flavor to the game. The game pays incredible attention to detail, from the little stuff on your desk to the big picture of environmental storytelling. Plus, the way they've handled things like varying gravity in different places and gun recoil adds a really nice touch of realism. One thing that really shines in Starfield is the character interactions and dialogue. The voice acting is top notch, in my opinion, and the expressions and lip syncing are pretty good for the most part. Your dialogue choices matter as well, so you can shape your character's personality in making crucial decisions. The NPCs in the game are a diverse bunch, both in terms of looks, accents, and behavior. It feels like a living, breathing world out there, and your companions have distinct personalities and desires and goals. They are active and they're doing stuff even when you're not interacting with them. As for combat, you've got a bunch of weapons, throwables, melee options, and they all pack a pretty good punch. And downed enemies aren't just out for the count. They might have some info they can tell you. Okay, and yes, the enemy AI can be a bit hit or miss in both combat and regarding stealth play, and it's definitely Bethesda RPG style combat. But I've been enjoying the combat so far. The game lets you play your way, whether you're sneaking around, going in guns blazing, or trying to do the diplomatic persuasion route in conversations. And then there's the whole transportation deal. You can use the star map to zip around or take the wheel yourself and pilot your own ship. Different ships mean different gameplay experiences, from hunting bounties in a very nimble vessel to hauling cargo in a big one. Starfield also throws in faction-controlled planets with security scans for contraband. Ship controls are smooth, if a little floaty, and the ability to customize your ships lets you play it completely your way, whether you're into stealth or combat. The scale of Starfield is a little bit mind-boggling at first. With so many systems and planets to explore, it's a game that really makes you feel, especially in the early game, like a small speck in a vast universe. In my opinion, Starfield nails the emergent storytelling angle. There are quests and activities galore, and you'll stumble upon unexpected adventures while you're at it. Exploring will pay off big time, and those side quests, they often have really emotional stories and really good rewards. Building relationships with your companions and customizing them adds depth to your gameplay. So managing your outposts and tweaking your ship is like a game within a game. Character progression is deep, and there's loads of skills and abilities to unlock. Skill challenges will encourage you to explore and experiment, and the crafting at research stations adds a whole nother layer of complexity. Okay, now, on to the not so perfect stuff. There are definitely technical hiccups here and there, like frame rate blips and characters glitching out. Loading screens can break your immersion, but I'm assuming that those things are going to be, for the most part, patched out. So here's the design stuff that can be annoying or immersion breaking. Bethesda games have always made players contend with inventory limits, but they really feel brutal in Starfield. Given the amount of stuff you're picking up in Starfield at all times, from weapons to armor to resources to so much more, it's surprising how quickly your inventory maxes out. Even if you expand your inventory to the max, you use companions as mules and dump your excess items into your ship cargo, it will quickly get maxed out. You're really forced to pick and choose what loot you're going to take with you. To me, the lack of local maps in Starfield is maybe one of its most confusing omissions. When you're on a planet, while you can pull up a surface map, it's basically just a grid that's completely lacking any detail and only shows you spots you can fast travel to. Navigating cities without having a map that you can look at can cause confusion, especially when you're trying to look for a vendor that sells a specific item. Starfield's quest log also feels a bit bare bones regarding what it presents. While it does categorize quests from across groups like main missions, faction missions, activities, and the like, basic sorting options like sorting missions based on location, they're not available, which, given how much you're hopping around from place to place in the game, seems like kind of a big oversight. Additionally, the log itself isn't very descriptive about where you're at in a quest. So even though you do get a very brief, basically a one-liner description of the mission when it initiates, that description does not update as you progress further, which means if you come back to a quest after a while and you don't remember exactly at what point you left that particular story, there's really no easy way to get your bearings again. Bethesda has crammed Starfield full of an impressive variety of weapons, ranging from shotguns to rifles to pistols to laser pistols to electromagnetic weapons and, gosh, so much more. The variety, combined with the tightest and punchiest shooting, makes for a consistently enjoyable combat. However, the AI does act up sometimes, which can take away from the combat experience. Both your enemies and your companions have the tendency to randomly start behaving erratically, from standing out in the open like target dummies to running through a storm of gunfire without any regard for their or your safety. Also, the stealth is fairly buggy in my experience. For instance, if you give your companion a grenade, they'll go bananas with unlimited grenades and do a lot of damage on your behalf. The only problem with that is if you decide to talk your way out of a sticky situation, your companion is just as likely to yell, "Take that!" and lob a grenade in the background right as you're trying to pass your persuasion checks with an enemy. They also have a tendency to run out in the open when you're trying to sneak in on enemies, so it might be better to go it alone if you're trying to do stealth missions. One thing that a lot of players have noticed is how quickly you run out of ammo in Starfield. Though that's not because there's a shortage of ammo. No, the problem is there's a multitude of ammo types that can be used, and not all of them work with every weapon. So when you pick up an ammo type or buy more ammo from a vendor, the game does not tell you which of your weapons it will work with, which means a lot of switching back and forth between menus. I think this will become a non-issue as I advance and settle on the weapons I carry the most and memorize the ammo types, but in early game, I have found that quite frustrating. Starfield tries to let you be the spaceship pilot you've always dreamed of being, thanks to the level of freedom you're afforded in building whatever ship you want to build. When you're on land, however, things are a little different because the game does not give you any traversal options other than walking. You can sprint or use your boost pack, I guess. Of course, in city hubs, that isn't really a huge issue, but on the hundreds of uncharted planets scattered throughout the settled systems, exploration and traversal can feel really slow. And if you happen to get over encumbered and find yourself doing the slow walk back to your ship, oh, you better have patience. Starfield's user interface and menus do need some work. For a game that has this much going on, designing a UI that's simultaneously clean, quick, and informative is always going to be a challenge. I get that. And Starfield really did not completely succeed in this. The menus are kind of cluttered, but they're not always as informative as you want. In addition to the lack of detail in the quest log I mentioned earlier, for instance, the game also does not show you details on weapons or loot you can pick up, so you don't know if things are even worth picking up. You just have to pick it up and check out the item in your inventory to decide if you want to keep it. Meanwhile, simple actions can also require multiple button presses and more menu navigation than they should. Fast traveling from system to system, for instance, has you going in and out of multiple menus and submenus, which maybe wouldn't be as big of a deal if you weren't doing it as often as you do in this game. And speaking of the quest log, Starfield categorizes quests pretty effectively, but it does fall short when it comes to sorting options. The absence of location-based sorting is a real oversight given the game's frequent travel demands. And as I mentioned earlier, the quest log lacks updated descriptions of your progress, which will leave you in the dark if you return to a quest after an extended break. So to sum all this up, in my opinion, the whole point of Bethesda games is that you can go anywhere and do anything you want. It's so easy to get lost in their games. But in Starfield, it's also totally possible to just focus on the Constellation questline, or you can add some or all of the main faction questlines towards a playthrough, but totally ignore the miscellaneous missions, side quests, and activities. This is something that's very beautiful about this game in that it can be played however you want or have the time to. You can spend hours building ships or play the whole game with the first ship you get, but don't do that. You can buy a house or apartment and spend hours decorating it, or never even set foot inside any of the several possible homes you could get along the way. You can dive into outpost building, or you can never build an outpost. You can explore all the planets or never explore even one. But again, why would you do that? I've seen some criticisms online about bland quests and not enough combat, but the truth is, if you're spending a lot of time in game doing stuff you don't want to do, that's 100% on you. It is a slow burn, though. A lot of what makes the game compelling comes on you more slowly, and the early hours of the game can seem bland. The story and lore, well, they unfold. They don't just land at your feet. It's definitely an RPG, not an FPS. My only real regret, to be honest, is that the game does not have a co-op feature, because there have been multiple times when I would have loved to turn to a friend and say, "Look at that," or "Let's go there." Because talking about it on Discord just is not the same. Starfield is a genuinely impressive game that hides its best stuff in the early hours, but it will reward you over time if you have a story and exploration and discovery focused mindset. At least, that's how your local spacefaring grandma sees it. As usual, let me know what you think and enjoy your day, and remember to be kind. I'll see you in New Atlantis.